So this is bizarre. I've never done anything like this before, and to not start off like an NA or AA meeting, I guess. But hi, my name is Dana, and I am a wife of 24 years. I have 5 grown children, all of whom are doing very, very well for themselves. They've turned out to be great adults, amazing people. I am a military wife. My husband has 25 years of naval service. He is currently a naval officer, but we did 10 years enlisted before we got to this point. Anyhow, I am, as of the last few days, a brand new empty nester, and I have bipolar disorder, type 1, with psychosis. Possibly on the verge of a new diagnosis, but we'll see. So, all of that to say, I've decided to, well, let me back up. Just recently, I came forward on Facebook with this illness, and I have, what I think, have done a pretty good job of hiding this from people for many, many years. Social media is a great way of just putting out there all the good stuff and nothing that's bad. It kind of gets knocked sometimes when you see people putting too much of their personal bad stuff on there. Nobody wants to hear it, nobody wants to see it, and I get it, you know. But in that same vein, I never put anything out there about where I was in life, because who wants anybody to see when you're not okay? And unfortunately, there are many, many times where I was not okay. Sometimes I was able to hide that and put on a brave face for everybody and for myself, so that I didn't, feel like I was exhibiting myself so poorly in front of everyone. And then other times, not so much. Other times I just couldn't do it, and I'd have to take a small hiatus and try to pull myself back together. Sometimes for days, sometimes for a month or so at a time. But it's been interesting. Some of it's been destructive. There's been many, many ups and downs throughout throughout my life because of this illness. And I hope that maybe sharing some of where I've been, where I am currently, what I feel, that it will be twofold. That, number one, maybe I can help someone else like me who's kind of shut themselves or this part of their life away from the world because of the stigma of being mentally ill. And it is there. I'm still struggling with accepting this diagnosis myself. It's not an easy thing to think about, and the future doesn't look too promising. Sorry, I have a hard time keeping a train of thought sometimes. For those who don't know, I'm coming out of a pretty bad depression. Here, just the last few days, I've finally started to feel like my moods have been fairly mixed, but I'm starting to feel like I'm on the uphill swing. So anyway, I wanted to try to keep on track with this, but I'm just hoping when I put that video out on Facebook, the support and the love that I received was almost overwhelming. I didn't get any negative response at all. I received nothing but love, and it was pretty tremendous for me. I mean, from comments on the post, to private messages, to phone calls, to just people offering their time and an ear to listen. And sometimes that's really all you can do. But anyway, I thought that maybe putting a video together about what this life is actually like and the ups and downs, because there's some good, and there's a lot of bad. But sometimes you just got to remember to focus on the good as much as you can. That's what I'm trying to do in the midst of my current circumstances. So I hope that this video will help somebody, and hopefully it will help me to be able to talk. There's not always somebody available to talk to you, or to me. um, and sometimes I don't necessarily know that I want to burden anybody with how I'm feeling, you know, and I'm sure many people would say it's not a burden, but it feels like a burden to me. It feels like I'm dumping my problems on someone else. And, you know, I think it probably wears on them to have to hear it so much. So maybe if I just get on here and put together a video about how I'm feeling or where I'm at or what I've learned, because gosh, I study this illness all the time. I'm forever trying to get ahead of it. And I feel like I'm always one step behind. I'm always one step behind. But, well, I shouldn't say I'm always been researching it. I really didn't give it any kind of credit at all in my life up until here recently. We had some family traumatic events, and my husband left on deployment. 2 of my kids have left home, and I've been a total mess. And I've finally begun to accept and acknowledge that I have a mental illness. And try not to cry, because that's difficult. That's hard to swallow. You know, it's scary. You know, there's also a relief to it to know that there really is a reason behind how I've felt all these years. But accepting it is difficult. And so if someone else sees this, and, you know, maybe they'll realize it's not easy. Even when you come to know and believe that it's true, that you have a problem, that there's an issue, and it's out of your control, there's really not much that you can do about it. In a sense, there are things that you can do about it, and I'll talk about that in videos. But, or at least what I'm learning to do about it, and the things that I'm trying. But, you know, coming to accept that this is what it is, you know, and learning how to cope with it, live with it, learn what your triggers are, the things that send you spiraling, you know. But anyway, so that's me, that's who I am. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm coming out of a depression now. I feel pretty even-keeled today, much more so even than yesterday. And I figured today would be a good day to start these videos. So anyway, that's basically your introduction to who I am. And this is so strange. We'll see how this goes. You know, I feel pretty good to start it, but we'll see. I'm kind of gotten more comfortable being in front of the camera because of all the videos that I make for my husband. So we'll see how this goes. Okay, so a little bit of a backstory. I come from the typical American broken home, I guess. You know, my parents divorced when I was very young, and they never really got along. You know, I was too young to really understand all the things that were going on in their lives or whatever, but anyhow, it wasn't pleasant. And as we grew up, my parents both remarried, and there was definitely some abuse in my life, and that abuse went on until I was 16 years old. Somewhere during that time in my junior high year, and I don't even remember, I want to say it was 7th or 8th grade, but I couldn't honestly begin to tell you which year it was. But I made 2 suicide attempts, and was not in a good place. Not in a good place. And then fast forward till I was 18, I finally had moved out of my house and was doing my own thing, and well, I had jumped around houses, to be honest with you, but that's for another video. But anyways, at this point I had gotten married, and it was not the best of circumstances. There are certain things I will choose not to discuss on here because it is public, and the people in my lives are all, very many of them are still alive, or in my life, all of them are still alive, most of them, so, or a good many of them, so I will probably keep this fairly tame. But anyway, so anyways, it was not a good situation, and I ended up with another suicide attempt. And then, I can't remember, things are kind of fuzzy sometimes, but fast forwarding again, I moved home briefly and then went into the military, and I joined the Navy. And in there I had a baby, met my husband, and had a baby, and I ended up getting injured, and so I got out. And I really don't know. I mean, the early days with my husband and kids, some of it is a blur. I definitely know that I was having some pretty serious mood shifts because I was always in some sort of fight or flight mode. I was always trying to check out. I was always trying to say, I don't belong here. I shouldn't be here. What am I doing? How to get myself into this mess when you got 5 kids? There was always something. So I know that this has been going on for many years. And then the suicide attempts when I was much younger. All this was, completely undiagnosed though. So fast forward again until about 2004. My youngest child was 4 years old. And things started to really deteriorate. My husband went on a deployment, and it did not go well for me. I ended up having a fairly major meltdown, and I can't even remember, because I want to say it was 2006 when anyway, somewhere in those years, and I wish that I could pinpoint, but I feel like, because there was 2 deployments in there. But anyhow, so that just goes to show you how many different medications I've been on at the time. And by the way, and I had been using opioids for several years at this point, since the accident in the military. Anyway, so where was I going with that? So fast forwarding to then, I finally went to the doctor because I just couldn't shake this depression that I was in, and I didn't even really realize it was depression at the time. I just knew that I was off. I was very, very irritable. Like nothing was okay. I was very stressed out, more so than I should have been, or I felt like I should have been. And I really didn't even recognize it as a pattern or anything that I had been through in the past. It was just, it hit me differently. I don't know. But I went to the doctor, and she diagnosed me depressed and put me on a antidepressant. Well, for anybody who doesn't know, if you give a bipolar person, especially bipolar 1, a antidepressant without a mood stabilizer, there is the possibility, and not for everybody, but there is the possibility of sending them the opposite direction. So in other words, she gave me the antidepressant, which brought me out of my low. But the problem was, because I am bipolar and I'm bipolar 1, the manic phase is pretty intense for me. And what happened was, when she put me on that antidepressant, I came out of the low and zinged right into this crazy, crazy high, where I was pretty much up all night long and partying and doing whatever it was that I wanted to do. I justified that the kids didn't need me because I was around the corner, and they were all, old enough to manage themselves, and that I just needed a break. It's deployment. My husband said it's fine. Now, mind you, he didn't know how far off the deep end I had gone. But I was literally staying up all night long, and then pretty much staying up all day long, so that I could still be there and do all the things that were required of me, or I felt like were the things that I absolutely should be doing with my children. And so I was basically, I guess you could say, burning the candle at both ends. And eventually it caught up with me, and it found me sitting in my kitchen floor in a total, absolute disaster, realizing that I needed help. I needed help because I could not manage all these emotions on my own, and my world had began spinning so fast that I couldn't slow it down. And then when it did come down, it came crashing down. And so I ended up having a friend take me to the hospital, and they admitted me. I ended up in the hospital for a month with a new diagnosis that I was no longer considered depressed, but I was bipolar 1 with psychosis. And from how I understand psychosis, it's just basically like when you have delusions, when you truly honestly believe something that's not real and you believe it to be real, or vice versa, or when you see things or you hear things. And for me personally, I hear things, I hear voices, I hear things, but I also hear voices. And occasionally on certain medications that they have tried in the past, I have actually had visual hallucinations. So neither of which is fun at all. It's not like taking a drug. It's not like going and doing mushrooms or some kind of cool psychedelic acid. It's not like that at all. It's just, it's not pleasant. So anyway, they had me hospitalized for a month. It took a month for things, I guess, to get well, for me to get well enough that they felt like I wasn't a harm to myself or a danger to myself, and to be able to get me out of the hospital. The funny thing is that I did not take advantage of that time in the hospital, really. I just did whatever was necessary to get myself out of my current situation, which was just to behave, to be agreeable. Sometimes I couldn't be. Sometimes, I probably gave them every reason to keep me longer. But, none of it was really geared towards me learning about my illness. It was basically just to get out of the hospital. Whatever I had to do to get home, to get back to my family where I felt like I belonged. The longer I stayed, the harder it was for me to maintain my composure in that place. But anyway, that's when I got my diagnosis. So I believe that was either 2004 or 2006, but I think it was 2006. I'm wanting to say it was 2006. But anyhow, so that's how long it's been. And then I have basically 99.9% of the time from 2006 until the end of just this last year, 2018, I have lived in a state of denial about the whole thing. I never gave it any credit. I didn't do any research. I didn't try to learn about it. I stopped taking medications because I thought I was fine and they were making me gain weight. And who wants to take medicine when you feel fine? I didn't realize how important it was to not come off the medicine in the first place. Or at least not for me. I don't know what it's like for other people, but I do believe that the only thing that will keep me stable is medication. And I'm currently in the throes of trying to get mine re-evaluated and see if we can't change the meds up to try to help me. But anyway, so that's a little bit of my backstory, and I'll end this video here because I don't want them to get too long. But so in the next video, I will talk about how I got to the next place in life, and which will be, I don't know. Well, I'll just mention it really quick. So fast forward multiple years, everything was fine. I was doing fine. I was no longer in the hospital. I wasn't being followed by a doctor. I wasn't taking medication. Or maybe I was. I might have been on meds. I can't remember if I had come off them or not. But my husband left, and I had multiple episodes throughout that time period, but none of which required hospitalization. So, but after my husband left, which is always a big trigger for me, I had a really bad episode, which ended me I was in a very bad manic phase that then dumped me right off into a deep, deep depression, which left me suicidal once again. And I had to be hospitalized at that point in time. And that time I was hospitalized against my will. So that was not something that I wanted. It was something that my children, unfortunately, felt that they had to do for my own safety. And it's a horrible thing as a parent when you realize what position you've put your children in, because you don't realize that you have a problem. And when I say that with all earnesty. There's no you don't realize in the middle of this that you have a problem at all. And we lived in a basic denial of this problem, or at least I did. And my husband, I think he would own that as well, that we didn't give it any credibility. We didn't take time to do anything or learn about it. So, we've paid the consequences of that. I hope that maybe this video will reach somebody before they get to that point, and they can try to make, try to come to terms with what you have, because it's so easy to sit in denial of it. It's so easy. But nothing's going to improve until you can start to, register that this is what you have. It is what it is. You don't have to like it, but accepting it means that we can move forward. Or I know for me, that's what's happening. It's hard, but I'm learning to talk about it. And that's why I decided to make these videos. Maybe it'll help me. Maybe it'll help others. I don't know. But it helps me to get it off my chest. It helps me to just be able to vent and not have to vent to one person over and over again that you feel like you're bothering them. So anyway, I'm starting to ramble, so I'm going to close this particular video out. But for that to be said, I've been hospitalized 3 times now, because there's a current hospitalization that I'll tell you about in the next video. But sorry, I got to take a note. I have to take lots of notes because of what I want to talk to you guys about next time. But I have to take lots of notes because I can't remember things. I have a pretty significant problem remembering things. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope maybe it helps somebody. I don't know. It helped me to talk about it, if that matters at all. Anyway, and we'll see how it goes. We'll see if anybody's interested in listening to me ramble or not. All right, well, I hope everybody has a wonderful, positive day. Lots of love, lots of light.